Chapter 1, Just a little bone marrow. Tess, your sister's life is in your hands. Just one more marrow extraction and she'll live. How can you be so heartless, so unwilling to save her? The speaker was Tess Gardner's childhood sweetheart and her fiancé, Ethan Pierce. At this moment, his eyes blazed with a fury that seemed ready to devour her whole, all to force her to save her sister, Leela. But he had no idea that if Tess underwent one more bone marrow extraction, she would die. And what was more critical, if Tess didn't survive, Ethan Pierce wouldn't make it either. When they were children, Ethan had been in a severe car accident, his life hanging by a thread. Tess, frantic with worry, had sought out doctors and remedies to no avail. In the end, she could only kneel and pray to the heavens. Perhaps her sincerity moved the world, for she truly encountered a kind-hearted deity. Without hesitation, Tess made a wish. She was willing to trade her life for his. But the deity had other plans. I will bind your lives together. This way, he will live. But from now on, your lives are linked to live and die as one. And just like that, 22 years had passed. Throughout those years, Tess had donated bone marrow to Leela time and time again. The long-term torment had wrecked her body. Now, all her organs were in severe failure. The doctor had warned her long ago. One more extraction, and death was certain. Meanwhile, Leela's aplastic anemia was already under control. Thinking of this, Tess's eyes reddened with a sour bitterness. She looked up at Ethan, her gaze filled with sorrow, her voice trembling slightly. Ethan, my body truly can't take another marrow extraction. Besides, if anything happens to me, you'll die too. Do you still want me to donate? Smack, with a sharp crack, Leela, who had been lying weakly on the hospital bed, summoned a sudden burst of strength, rushed over, and slapped Tess hard across the face. Leela's eyes were bloodshot as she shrieked at the top of her lungs. Tess, even if you don't want to save me, you can't be so spiteful as to curse Ethan. With that, she dropped to her knees with a thud and cried out to the heavens, "Oh, deity above, if you can hear me, please take back Tess's cruel words. If there's any punishment, let it fall upon me." "Leela, don't say that." Ethan's heart ached. He quickly helped Leela up, holding her trembling, sobbing form tightly in his arms. When he turned to look at Tess, his gaze was as cold as ice, filled with hatred. "Tess, if anything happens to Leela, I'm not finished with you today. You must save her," their mother, Alina, chimed in from the side. "Tess, if it weren't for your sister getting sick and needing a bone marrow transplant, your father and I would never have even considered having a second child. To put it bluntly, your life was given to you by your sister. Now we're just asking you to donate a little marrow, not for your life. Why are you making such a fuss? Do you have any gratitude for your sister?" Tess met her mother's furious gaze, the color draining from her face, her lips trembling slightly. "Mom, so from the moment I was born, I was just a bone marrow bank for my sister, is that it? If that's the case, have you ever asked yourself, did I ever want to be born into this world?" Alina was visibly stunned, her expression shifting, but her anger still burned hot. "I gave birth to you, so your life is mine to command. You will do as I say?" As if shocked that such sentiments could still be heard in the 21st century, the doctor, who had been silent all this time, could no longer bear it and spoke up. "Tess Gardner is an adult and has the right to decide for herself whether to donate bone marrow. Besides, Leela's condition is not that severe anymore." Before the doctor could finish, Leela, nestled in Ethan's arms, let out a great, sorrowful wail as if she had suffered a tremendous injustice. "Ethan, Mom, stop talking. I've been a burden to Tess for so many years. I owe her too much. Tess, for this great kindness, I'll repay you in the next life as a beast of burden." Saying this, she made a move to slam her head against the wall. As if he had expected this, Ethan's reflexes were sharp, and he pulled Leela into an even tighter embrace. This was not the first time Leela had used this trick of playing the martyr. In the past, whenever Tess hesitated about donating, Leela would pull this suicide by wall drama, successfully manipulating Ethan and Alina every time and emotionally blackmailing Tess. Sure enough, upon seeing this, Alina grabbed Leela with one hand while striking Tess with the other. "You heartless wretch. Are you really trying to force your sister to her death? I'm telling you, you will donate this marrow today. Whether you want to or not, even if I have to tie you down, I'll get you on that operating table." Half an hour later, on the operating table. After so many frequent marrow extractions over the years, Tess's body had built up a resistance to anesthesia. when the finger-length puncture needle pierced viciously into her body. An excruciating pain shot through her. Tess's vision went black, and she fainted from the agony. Before she lost consciousness, the voice of the deity from all those years ago echoed in her ears. "You have 10 days of life left." Tess struggled to open her eyes and saw, floating above her head, a faintly glowing number 10. In that instant, her heart was as clear as a mirror. In 10 days, she would bid farewell to this world of suffering and sever all ties with the Gardner family forever. Chapter 2. Two extremes. Tess slowly regained consciousness to a dim room. As her awareness returned, she realized she had been placed in a shared hospital ward. There was no one by her bedside, not even a glass of warm water on the nightstand. Her throat was so dry it felt like it might catch fire. Tess had no choice but to drag her sore, weak post-operative body shuffling step by step toward the hot water dispenser. She hadn't gone far when a familiar sound of laughter and chatter reached her ears. Tess froze, following the sound to a door with a glass window. Through it, she saw the scene inside. In a luxurious private room, brightly lit, her mother and her fiancé were gathered around Leela, laughing and chatting happily. It was as if the three of them were the real, inseparable family. In an instant, Tess felt a bitter taste flood her mouth as if a gallbladder had burst inside her. The bitterness surged and spread, and her eyes began to sting as a mist formed over them. Just then, Elena inadvertently looked up and caught sight of Tess at the door. A flicker of embarrassment crossed her eyes, quickly replaced by a smile as she called out, "Tess, you're awake." Ethan followed up, as if explaining, "I saw you were sleeping soundly, so I came over to keep Leela company." Tess said nothing, her gaze fixed on the dining cart in the room. It was laden with a variety of meticulously prepared nutritional meals, clearly made especially for Leela. Elena, seeing her stare, thought she wanted some and pushed the cart toward her. "It's a bit cold now. Your sister just had surgery, she can't eat cold things. You can have it." Tess's chest felt as if it were blocked by something heavy, the feeling suffocatingly uncomfortable. Leela just had surgery, but wasn't she also just subjected to a major bone marrow extraction? Leela couldn't eat cold food, but she could. In the end, it was clear. They had never truly seen her, Tess Gardner. She just didn't understand. Even if she was just a living bone marrow bank, she was still her mother's own flesh and blood. How could her mother not spare even a sliver of affection for her? They say a mother's love is instinctual, but Tess racked her brains and couldn't find a single reason to convince herself why her mother was so cold to her. She couldn't figure it out, and that's why she couldn't let it go. The feeling was chilling to her core. The puncture site on her iliac crest burned with a fiery pain. Tess gasped, clutching her lower back as she turned and slowly walked away. "I won't eat. I'm going back to my room." Behind her, Leela's aggrieved voice drifted out. "Ethan, Mom, is Tess angry because she saw you prepared all this food just for me?" The flicker of guilt in Elena's eyes was instantly replaced by anger. "Your body is weak. Isn't it right for us to take better care of you? She's your own sister. If she's going to be petty about something like this, then she's the one who's heartless," Ethan chimed in. "Leela, you're just too kind-hearted, always thinking of others. We want to be good to you, and no one can stop that." The moment the door to the private room closed, Tess's figure swayed slightly, as if struck by a heavy hammer. She didn't turn back, forcing herself to continue shuffling, step by step, back to her own ward. As soon as she lay back on the bed, the pain struck again, and Tess broke out in a cold sweat. There were other patients in the room, so she could only bite her lip hard, not daring to make a sound. A short while later, Ethan hurried in. Seeing her state, he asked with a worried expression, "Tess, why are you sweating so much? Is it very painful? Let me rub it for you." Hearing this, Tess's eyes instantly welled up, a mist clouding her vision. Perhaps it was because people's emotions become particularly sensitive and fragile when they are extremely weak. Or perhaps, after all, they had 20 years of history together, and she simply couldn't let go. Looking at the handsome man before her, Tess could no longer hold back. As if releasing all the grievances accumulated over the years, she sobbed, "Ethan, you're all I have. Promise me you'll never leave me, okay?" The plea in her eyes softened Ethan's heart. He reached out and gently stroked her head, saying softly, "Silly Tess, how could I ever leave you? I'm always here. In a week, after we're married, we can be together forever and ever." Just as he finished speaking, Eleanor's anxious voice came from outside the door. "Ethan, come quickly, Leela is suddenly vomiting uncontrollably on the bed." Tess felt her hand suddenly become empty. When she looked again, Ethan was gone, having bolted out like an arrow from a bow. A moment later, the doctor's scolding voice came from outside. "I've told you many times, the post-op diet needs to be light. How can her stomach handle so many rich foods at once? It's indigestion. It's better that she threw it up. I'll prescribe some digestive medicine for her." At the same time, Tess's stomach rumbled with hunger. She hadn't eaten all day and her stomach was cramping, but no one knew and no one cared. The commotion outside gradually subsided. Tess looked at the now darkened hallway light, knowing that tonight, Ethan probably wouldn't be coming back. Chapter 3. The family portrait without Tess last night. Tess had tossed and turned in a haze of confusion and excruciating pain. Whether she had fallen asleep or passed out from the pain, she could no longer recall. When she opened her eyes again, the sky was bright. Tess calculated in her head that Leela was being discharged today. Perhaps her family would handle her discharge papers as well and take her home with them. However, she waited and waited in her room for 2 hours, but not a single person appeared. She finally couldn't sit still any longer and walked straight to Leela's room. But when she pushed the door open, the room was empty. Tess's heart sank. She hurriedly stopped a passing nurse to ask. The nurse replied calmly, "Her boyfriend and her mother came to pick her up early this morning." Her boyfriend? Tess was stunned. "Yes," the nurse explained patiently. "The handsome man who often came to keep her company, wash her face, help her dress, and took meticulous care of her. If he wasn't her boyfriend, who would be so devoted?" A chill wind blew through the hallway, making Tess's bones ache. She walked out of the hospital in a daze. She didn't know how long she had walked, but when she looked up in a trance, she was already at her front door. Inside, the house was filled with laughter and cheerful noise. Everyone was dressed in new clothes, their faces beaming. When Eleanor saw Tess walk in from outside, still in her hospital gown, she couldn't help but freeze for a moment. "Tess, you weren't home? I thought you were fine after the procedure and came back on your own." A bitter, self-mocking smile touched Tess's lips as she murmured, "Would any of you even notice if I died outside?" Ethan's brow furrowed. He stepped forward and said gently, "Tess, don't say that. Those words are so hurtful. They do care about you." "Do they?" Tess's eyes were filled with doubt, but she had no energy to argue. She looked straight at Ethan and demanded, "It's one thing for my mother not to know I was still in the hospital, but what about you? Ethan, as my fiancé, did you not know I was still lying there? When you were busy fussing over another woman, when others mistook you for Leela's fiancé, did you spare a single thought for my feelings?" Ethan met her desolate gaze, a flicker of guilt crossing his eyes, and a strange panic rising in his heart. Just as he was about to offer an explanation, Leela burst into tears. "Tess, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I'm the one who made everyone misunderstand my relationship with Ethan. I should just die. If I were gone, I wouldn't cause trouble for you and Ethan, You what? Are you going to slam your head against a wall again?" Tess's expression was calm, but her gaze was sharp as a blade, piercing through the fleeting shock and resentment in Leela's eyes. There was a time when Tess truly believed they were sisters, connected by blood, and should be inseparable. That's why she had endured the forced bone marrow donations since birth, never complaining or shrinking back, even when the pain was unbearable. She had even once felt grateful that she could save her sister's life. But now, as Leela stripped away everything she had, that long-held belief shattered. From her childhood crafts, her treasured gifts, the spot as the last disciple of a master painter, to her family's affection, and now her fiancé, Ethan. Leela was sobbing uncontrollably, wailing that she wanted to die. Ethan, seeing this, looked at Tess with a gaze that had turned to disgust. "Tess, Leela is your sister, your family. Isn't it right for me to be good to her? She's been sick since she was a child. If you can't feel sorry for her, fine, but how can you be so vicious to her? If you really drive her to her death, will you be able to live with yourself?" Eleanor suddenly grabbed a dress and threw it forcefully at Tess's face. The rough fabric scraped against her cheek, stinging. "Look, we were supposed to take a happy family portrait today, and your sister even picked out a new dress for you." Eleanor's voice was filled with blame. "But what about you? You come back and start a scene, turning the house upside down and pushing your sister like this." Since you dislike Leela so much, get upstairs, don't come down here and be an eyesore." The dress fell to the floor. Tess recognized it instantly. It was the kind of cheap dress the maid wore for chores, and it was already worn. Tess didn't mind that, but she knew this was Leela's deliberate attempt to humiliate her. Eleanor's words were even more chilling. She turned stiffly and walked up the stairs, one step at a time. As she neared her room, she saw that Ethan and Eleanor downstairs had already managed to console Leela. They seemed unaffected by the earlier scene, happily continuing with their family portrait. The family dog was nestled among them. The only one missing from the portrait was her, Tess. The moment their smiles were captured on camera, upstairs, Tess gently closed her bedroom door, tears rolling silently down her face. She looked up at the ceiling, where the stark number 9 met her gaze. At this moment, she found she was no longer so afraid of day 0 arriving. Chapter 4. Thanks to the rival for the next few days, Tess stayed in her room and didn't go downstairs. Ethan, Eleanor, and everyone else in the house seemed to have erased her from their existence. No one checked on her. Only the maid brought her meals on time each day, a reminder that she was still alive. Until one day, the sounds of joyful laughter echoed from downstairs, as if a grand party was being prepared. It was only then that Tess remembered. Today was Leela's birthday, and also her own. But for her, this day had never brought a shred of joy. From the moment Tess was born, Leela's tears and her line, "My sister and I share a birthday, will you love her more than me?" had acted like a curse, making Eleanor completely ignore her existence and her birthday along with it. Leela's birthday party was, as always, a grand affair. And Tess, the one locked in a cage, was actually granted amnesty and allowed to come downstairs. Ethan came upstairs personally to bring her a gown. The moment he opened the door, Ethan looked at Tess's increasingly pale face, a flicker of pain in his eyes. "You haven't been eating or sleeping well these past few days, have you? Why do you look so worn out?" His words carried a hint of apology as he sighed. "It's my fault, too. I've neglected you. Tess, don't be angry with me." Saying this, he gently ruffled her hair as he used to. Tess knew she was weak, but the man before her was someone she had loved for over 20 years, a man she was willing to risk her life for. Even if it was just a small kindness offered after a moment of cruelty, she found it hard to resist, savoring it like a precious treat. She immediately shook her head. "Ethan, I'm not blaming you." Ethan handed her the gown. "Then hurry up and get changed. It's Leela's birthday, and a lot of friends and family will be here." His tone held a hint of pleading. "Tess, please be sensible. Don't fight with Leela. Let her have a happy birthday, okay?" Tess's hand, which had been reaching for the gown, froze in midair. She turned to look at Ethan, the eyes that once held so much love now seeming so distant. Her voice was cold, as still as dead water. "Ethan, this is the real reason you came up to see me today, isn't it?" It was utterly laughable. Her own fiancé needed the excuse of her rival's birthday just to come and see her. His mind was completely filled with Leela's birthday, yet he had completely forgotten that today was her birthday too. Ethan met the deep abyss of desolation in her eyes, and his heart felt as if it had been stabbed by something sharp, a dull ache spreading through him. He couldn't help but step forward and pull her into a tight embrace, his voice growing softer. "Tess, I'm doing this for your own good. I don't want the rift between you two sisters to grow any deeper. If you're bothered by how close I am to Leela, our wedding is in 3 days. When we're living in our new house, I'll have more time to spend with you, okay?" Their eyes met, and his gaze seemed sincere. Tess looked at him, thinking that he probably was, genuinely, looking forward to their wedding. If they could get married successfully, it would be a perfect conclusion to their relationship. And then, she could die without regrets. So she hugged Ethan back, burying her head in his chest, greedily absorbing the warmth from his body. "Ethan, I'll be good tonight. And you can't forget, in 3 days, you have to marry me." Chapter 5. A heart-wrenching birthday gift outside the door, Leela watched everything, her eyes as dark and venomous as a snake's. Without a word, she turned and walked downstairs. As night fell, the Gardner villa was ablaze with lights, filled with constant laughter and cheer. Leela, dressed in a magnificent princess gown, was the center of attention, surrounded by guests on a stage, enjoying the treatment of a true princess. Meanwhile, in a corner, Tess stood alone in a simple dress, her eyes filled with envy and longing as she watched the splendor she had never possessed. As everyone presented Leela with expensive gifts, a family relative suddenly mentioned, "Hey, I remember today is Tess's birthday too, isn't it? Where's Tess? Why isn't she on stage with her sister?" Only then did everyone's gaze turn to Tess. Eleanor, as if just remembering, immediately walked over to Tess, took her hand, and explained awkwardly, "Oh, Tess is a quiet child. She doesn't like crowds, so she let Leela represent her on stage." At that moment, Ethan, who had been standing by Leela's side, looked at Tess in surprise, his eyes filled with confusion. "Why didn't you tell me today was your birthday too?" A bitter taste spread through Tess's heart. When they were children, Ethan always remembered her birthday. He would even stand up for her, saying the Gardners were playing favorites. He had even promised, "If your family won't celebrate your birthday, I will." Because of that, the young Tess had been lucky enough to celebrate a few birthdays and receive gifts from him. But times had changed. Ever since Ethan's attitude shifted from blaming Leela for taking Tess's marrow to joining the family and hoping she would give more to alleviate Leela's suffering. All the past beauty had vanished like a popped bubble. Despite the deep sense of grievance, Tess remembered her promise to Ethan to be good tonight. So, she forced a faint smile, as if she truly didn't care about any of it. On stage, Leela, as if by chance, intimately linked her arm with Ethan's, skillfully drawing his attention back to her. She asked in a sweet, coquettish voice, "Ethan, what gift did you prepare for me?" Ethan paused for a moment, then pulled out a dazzling string of jewels from his pocket. Instantly, gasps of astonishment rippled through the crowd. "My God, isn't that the mermaid's tear? The rare treasure that sold for an 8-figure price at auction recently. Ethan is really generous with Leela, but the mermaid's tear symbolizes undying love. Why would he give it to Leela? Shouldn't it go to Tess?" Down below, Tess clenched her fists so tightly that her palms started to bleed. Her vision blurred as she looked at the deep blue jewel. Blue was her favorite color. Leela's favorite was clearly pink. A month ago, when Ethan had won the mermaid's tear, at the auction he had told her tenderly, "This mermaid's tear represents a love that lasts until death, just like my love for you. Tess, on our wedding day, I want you to wear this, so everyone knows that you're the only one in my heart." The vow still echoed in her ears, but now he had turned around and given this precious symbol of love to someone else. At this moment, however, Ethan didn't dare to look Tess in the eye. When Leela asked him to put the mermaid's tear on her, he did so without hesitation. Tess turned away abruptly, forcing back the tears that threatened to overflow. She tried to calm herself and quietly returned to her corner seat, not going straight back to her room. She knew that if she left now, people would gossip about Leela, and Leela would use it as an excuse to cry and make a scene, perhaps even threatening to slam her head into a wall. She had promised Ethan she would be good, and she couldn't break her word. The banquet was filled with a dazzling array of delicacies, but due to her physical condition, Tess couldn't eat any of them, until a maid brought her a glass of warm orange juice, saying it was freshly squeezed and would help replenish her energy. Thinking of the wedding in 3 days, she hesitated but finally took it. Forcing down the churning in her stomach, she took small sips, her only hope to make it through the wedding without leaving Ethan with any regrets. However, she had barely taken a few sips when a sharp cry came from the stage. "Leela, Leela, what's wrong with you?" Chapter 6. Her goal on the stage, Leela swayed violently and then collapsed. Around her were shattered glass and a puddle of orange liquid. Immediately after, a red rash spread rapidly across her delicate arm. Her eyes widened in terror as she stared at the orange juice on the floor. Then, she turned to the trembling maid beside her, her voice shaking with tears. Is this orange juice? I'm allergic to orange juice, I'm going to die." The maid's face turned pale with fear, and she pointed a trembling finger at Tess. "It was the second young miss who wanted orange juice and told me to bring a glass to the first young miss as well. I swear I didn't know anything, it has nothing to do with me." Hearing this, Leela's eyes filled with tears of disbelief as she looked at Tess, her gaze screaming, "Tess, why would you try to harm me?" Eleanor, hearing the maid's words, erupted in fury, pointing a finger at Tess and screaming, "You bitch, you want to kill my Leela that badly. If anything happens to Leela, you won't live either, bitch." Tess froze. She couldn't believe her ears, couldn't believe those words had come from her own mother's mouth. Though she didn't know why the maid was framing her, she instinctively explained, It wasn't me. I didn't ask the maid to bring orange juice. I didn't know my sister was allergic to it. She then looked at Ethan, hoping he would believe her. But his eyes held only coldness and disappointment, a look that could have sliced her into 1,000 pieces. Tess, how can your heart be so venomous? Aren't you afraid of retribution? Ethan's words were like knives, sending a chill deep into Tess's heart. Her heart sank to the bottom of a pit. She said in a trembling voice, "Ethan, you don't believe me either. I really didn't do it." But Ethan didn't want to hear any more explanations. He violently flung her aside. Tess stumbled and crashed heavily into a table. A long gash opened on her arm, and blood instantly stained her sleeve. Ethan didn't even glance at her. He scooped Leela into his arms and rushed out, his voice filled with anxiety. "Leela, don't be afraid. I'm taking you to the hospital right now." Eleanor followed closely behind, still cursing Tess. "You jinx, you bring nothing but trouble to this family." Watching them hurry away, Tess suddenly seemed to understand something. She even felt that if she and Leela could switch conditions, Eleanor and Ethan would make them switch without a moment's hesitation. And they certainly wouldn't be willing to let Leela donate bone marrow for her. She felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Finally, she pushed herself up from the floor and staggered back toward her room. She didn't dare delay, terrified she would die on the cold floor. Back in her room, Tess wrapped herself tightly in her quilt, trying to dispel the chill in her heart. At some point, she lost consciousness again. She woke up when the window in her room was yanked open with a sharp, grating sound. The intense light made her instinctively shut her eyes. Just then, Eleanor's even more furious scolding voice rained down on her. "Tess, you're not even human. An animal has more conscience than you. You caused your sister to have an allergic reaction to orange juice, keeping her in the hospital all night, and you can still sleep. And what did you say to the guests? You said we play favorites, that we only love Leela and not you. You even slandered your sister, saying she's trying to steal your fiancé. You not only want to ruin your sister's reputation, you want to drive her to her grave." Eleanor grew more incensed as she spoke, ripping the quilt off Tess and yanking her up. "Get up, stop playing dead. You're going to get on your knees and apologize to your sister right now, and you're going to tell everyone that your sister never stole anything from you, that you were just being petty and making things up." Chapter 7. It's my fault the wound on Tess's arm from the previous night had never been treated. The blood had clotted, but the forceful pulling tore it open again. When Eleanor saw the blood-soaked bedding, her anger flared even more. "You don't even bother to treat your own wound. Are you trying to play the victim so everyone will say we treat you poorly?" Tess felt a surge of grievance, but knew that explaining was useless. Eleanor's attitude made everything clear. Just then, Ethan walked into the room, his expression grave. He exchanged a look with Eleanor, seemingly having made a decision, then said to Tess, "Tess, I have something to tell you. You shouldn't have spread rumors to slander Leela's reputation, saying she wants to steal your fiancé. Now, to protect my reputation, she's decided to just marry any random man. She said she doesn't know how long she has left to live and wants to be a bride once before she dies. But marriage isn't a game. It's a lifetime commitment. I can't rest easy and trusting her to someone else. So, I've decided that the wedding in 3 days will be for me and Leela." As if afraid Tess would misunderstand, he quickly added, "Don't get me wrong. I'm just doing this to calm Leela down. Once her emotions stabilize, I'll separate from her, and then you and I can be together. Our marriage will be in name only. Nothing will happen between us." The last thread of hope in Tess's heart finally snapped, and she finally understood why Leela had done all this. She stared blankly at Ethan, then at the composed Eleanor, her voice as light as a whisper in the wind. "So, you two already discussed this. You're just here to inform me, right?" Eleanor met Tess's gaze and looked away, but her tone remained harsh. "It was you who pushed Leela to this. We had no choice. If you have to blame someone, blame yourself. Yes, it's all my fault." Tess pulled at the corner of her mouth, a smile more painful than tears. "My fault for being born into this family. My fault for holding out hope for affection." Eleanor's lips moved as if to say something, but Tess had already turned to Ethan, each word squeezed from between her teeth. "Ethan, when did you fall in love with Leela?" She just wanted to know the truth before she died. Ethan, however, reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, instantly exploding. "What nonsense are you talking about? I already told you. I'm doing this for Leela's own good." But Tess could clearly see a flicker of guilt in his eyes. Her expression remained faint, almost unnaturally so. "Ethan, you say Leela's marriage isn't a game, but mine is. My wedding can just be given away so casually. You knew how much I was looking forward to this wedding." She had even seen this wedding as the final stop of her life. "In your eyes, Leela is a precious treasure who can't be touched. And me? Am I just a weed, is that it?" But she was a person too. She felt pain too. The sorrow in Tess's eyes was a bottomless abyss, capable of swallowing a person whole. Ethan took a deep breath, unable to look at her any longer. He softened his tone and said to Tess, "Tess, I'm sorry about this. But you have to believe me, once Leela's emotions are stable, I'll leave her. My wife will only be you." Tess had already closed her eyes and lain back down under the covers. She wanted to say that she no longer had a future. Chapter 8. Goodbye. The door creaked open and was then gently closed. Tess knew it was her mother and Ethan leaving. A short while later, a maid tiptoed in, called her name softly, and when she didn't respond, hesitated for a moment before gently lifting the covers and beginning to carefully treat the wound on her arm. Tess knew it was probably Alina and Ethan who had sent the maid. But now, she was no longer foolish enough to believe they did it out of genuine concern. It was merely to ensure her body was still viable as a bone marrow bank for Leela. In the following days, the villa once again filled with bustle. Even through her closed door, Tess could clearly hear the sounds of hurried preparations. She knew they were busy organizing the wedding for Ethan and Leela. The day before the wedding, Leela, radiant in a pristine white wedding gown, pushed open Tess's door. Around her neck was the world-renowned mermaid's tear, and on her finger, a massive diamond ring sparkled, making her look as beautiful as a fairy from a dream. The joy in her eyes was almost overflowing, but deep within them, a taunting glint was impossible to hide. "Tess, you're my dear sister, so I came especially to have you take a look. What do you think? Do I look beautiful?" After a pause, she continued, "By the way, for the wedding tomorrow, I'd like you to be my bridesmaid. If you don't come, who knows what outsiders will gossip about. I'm sure you wouldn't refuse me, right?" As she spoke, she made sure to glance at Ethan, who was standing beside her. Ethan immediately understood and chimed in, "Tess, be sensible. Don't upset Leela anymore." A flicker of self-mockery crossed Tess's lips. This was what it felt like to have your heart gouged out. Still, she replied softly, "I understand." But none of them knew that Tess was fated not to be a bridesmaid at this wedding, because tomorrow would be the last day of her life. Seeing Tess staring out the window with empty eyes, looking listless and uninterested, Leela seemed to have achieved her goal and left, satisfied. Ethan glanced at Tess and was about to leave when he heard her say one last thing. "Ethan, every word I've ever said to you before was true." This included her explanations when Leela had framed her, and also, if she died, Ethan would die too. Hearing this, Ethan's steps faltered. His mind churned, but he probably dismissed it as her last, feeble attempt at a defense. He left without another word, closing the door behind him. As night fell, Tess sat alone in the courtyard, quietly gazing at the night sky, as if trying to etch this final night of her life deep into her memory. Just then, a faint meow sounded. Tess followed the sound, and saw a small orange cat had fallen into a storm drain. Blood was trickling from its leg, but it was struggling valiantly, desperately trying to climb out. Perhaps the kitten's will to live touched the softest corner of Tess's heart, or perhaps a sense of shared misery arose within her. Ignoring the filth and stench of the drain, Tess reached her arm inside. The kitten, as if possessing a keen intelligence, instantly understood her intent and climbed up her arm. Even though she had saved it, Tess's eyes reddened. To think that in the end, only this little cat I've just met would trust me. Tess carried the kitten back to her room, carefully cleaned its wound, and used an express delivery service to order a large amount of cat food. After settling the kitten, she looked at it with eyes full of affection, as if looking at the continuation of her own life. "Kitty, I'm leaving this world tomorrow. Thank you for giving me this final moment of tenderness. You must live on for me." The kitten stared back at her with its round eyes, a glint of intelligence in its pupils. As if it understood, it let out a soft meow. The next day, when Ethan came to pick up the bride, he saw that Tess was already up, combing her hair and applying makeup in front of the mirror. The large stone that had been weighing on his heart finally lifted, and the unease that had plagued him for days dissipated slightly. He walked over, looking at Tess with a gentle gaze. "Tess, you look beautiful. I'll see you at the wedding." With a calm expression, Tess coolly applied her lipstick as she watched him carry the bride, Leela, out of the house. She didn't say that this was, in fact, her funerary makeup. There was no way she would be at the wedding. An hour later, at the wedding venue. The guests who knew about Ethan and Tess's complicated past, though physically present at Ethan and Leela's wedding, were already whispering amongst themselves. Elena, of course, heard these gossipy remarks. Her face paled and flushed in turns, but she had to force a smile. She kept scanning the crowd for Tess, and when she couldn't find her, she gritted her teeth and muttered, "Is that wretched girl deliberately not coming just to spite Leela? Just wait until this wedding is over. I'll teach her a lesson." She tried to call Tess, but her phone went straight to voicemail. She hurried over to Ethan and whispered in a low, furious voice, "Call Tess and tell her to get here in 10 minutes. If she dares not to show up, she can forget about being a gardener ever again." Ethan was also feeling a surge of anger. While holding Leela's hand to soothe her, he pulled out his phone. Just as he was about to dial, a call from an unknown number came in. For some reason, Ethan's heart suddenly lurched. As if he had a premonition, he answered the call immediately. As soon as the call connected, a deep, heavy male voice came from the other end. "Mr. Ethan Pierce, this is City Hospital. Miss Tess Gardner has passed away. Her body is now in the morgue. We need you to come and handle the arrangements." Chapter 9, Crocodile Tears. Half an hour later, in the morgue of City Hospital, a chill seemed to shoot up from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Ethan stared fixedly at the form vaguely outlined under the white sheet, his mind filled with utter disbelief. He refused to believe that Tess, who had been alive and well, putting on makeup before his very eyes just an hour ago, could now be lying here, lifeless. His hands trembled uncontrollably, hovering in mid-air, not daring to touch the white sheet, as if as long as he didn't lift it, Tess would still be in this world. It wasn't until a soft whoosh that Leela reached out and lifted the sheet. The small movement landed like a heavy hammer on everyone's hearts. A small, exquisite face, completely devoid of color, was revealed serene and cold. Tess, Eleanor's shriek shattered the silence of the morgue. Immediately after, her body seemed to lose all its strength, and she crumpled to the floor, unable to get up. Ethan's gaze wavered, and his legs felt as if they were filled with lead, each step an immense effort. He gripped his thighs tightly, inching his way toward Tess, murmuring incessantly, "How could this be? How could this have happened? She was fine just an hour ago." Looking at the beautiful, bright makeup on Tess's face, his heart clenched violently. Had she known then that she was going to die? Was she applying her own funerary makeup? Just then, the doctor who had called him walked over, his tone calm with a professional coldness. "Miss Tess Gardner came here on her own. After giving us her final instructions, her heart stopped. This is the death confirmation form. The family needs to sign it." Ethan's gaze slowly moved from the form to the doctor. Recognizing him as Tess's attending physician, a lightning bolt seemed to flash through his mind. His face contorted with rage as he glared at the man. "You were in charge of Tess's health, wasn't she always fine? Why did she suddenly just die?" Eleanor, as if revived, struggled up from the floor and lunged forward, grabbing the doctor's arm like a madwoman. "Give me back my daughter, give me back my Tess." The doctor watched this scene with a blank expression. He took a thick stack of test reports from his folder and spread them on the table. "Tess was forced by you to donate bone marrow almost every month. Her organs were already in severe failure. The hospital issued multiple critical condition notices, which you signed. I also stressed to you many times. A week ago, I told you again that Tess's body couldn't take it anymore, that another marrow extraction would be life-threatening. Tess herself also said she would die, but what did you do? You insisted she was making excuses, said her life was given to her by the Gardner family, and even threatened to tie her to the operating table to extract the marrow." At this point, the doctor's voice trembled slightly. He fought to control his emotions, to maintain his professional composure in this tragic scene. Hearing this, Ethan and Eleanor stared blankly at the stack of reports. Their signatures were glaringly conspicuous. Like a film rewinding, fragments of forgotten moments flashed through their minds. Every time Leela had a slight relapse, all their attention was on her. The doctor's warnings about Tess's condition were like wind in their ears, easily dismissed and forgotten. Eleanor sobbed, her body trembling uncontrollably. I really didn't know Tess was so sick. If I had known, how could I have forced my own daughter to her death? Oh, give me a break. A crowd had gathered outside the morgue. One of the onlookers suddenly spoke up, his voice filled with contempt and anger. I've been a patient in this hospital for half a year. I've heard the doctor say Tess was in critical condition at least 5 or 6 times. And now you say you didn't know. Were you deaf or blind before? You're unfit to be a mother, you're an animal, clearly wanting your younger daughter to die and now putting on this fake show of grief. Aren't you disgusting? A caregiver couldn't help but add, I knew that young lady. She was always so polite to everyone, calling us uncle and auntie, and she often brought us fruit and snacks. Such a good kid, forced to her death like this. What a tragedy. A nurse stood by, casting a cold glance at Eleanor and then at the grief-stricken Ethan, her face a mask of disdain and ridicule. You probably don't know, but that guy Ethan is actually Tess's fiancé. And what does he do? Spends all day fawning over another woman, hugging and cuddling with her. Now that Tess is gone, he's putting on this act of deep love. Crocodile tears are more genuine than his phony display. The angry accusations from the crowd made Ethan and Eleanor shrink with shame, while also feeling as if a knife was being brutally twisted in their hearts. It turned out that everyone knew about Tess's condition. Only her closest family and her lover had chosen to be selectively blind, ignoring her pain and peril, until she was gone, until she was dead. Chapter 10. His retribution. Eleanor's cries were heart-wrenching. Ethan's hands trembled like leaves in a storm. He wanted to touch Tess again, but the doctor grabbed his wrist. You should be able to see how thin Tess is now. If you touch her, you might break one of her bones. Ethan knew the doctor was probably speaking from a place of anger, but what he said was the truth. The Tess before him was painfully thin. Tess! Ethan's legs gave out, and he knelt before her. When did you get so thin? He remembered the old Tess, with a bit of baby fat on her face, soft and so very cute. The doctor spoke again, his voice still devoid of warmth. We checked during the emergency resuscitation. There was nothing in her stomach. Even if she hadn't died from her illness, she would have starved to death. Starved to death? Ethan's heart dropped. During this time, all their attention had been focused on supplementing Leela's nutrition. They had completely neglected Tess. To think that he, a man of considerable wealth, had let his own fiancée nearly starve to death at that thought. A metallic taste filled his mouth, and he nearly threw up. The doctor continued, before she passed, Tess had a message for you. She said that what she owed you, she has now repaid with her life. From now on, whether in this life or the next, as a human or a ghost, she has nothing to do with any of you. Hearing this, Ethan and Eleanor understood everything. They knew why Tess had to use her last breath to come to the hospital. It was to have an authoritative institution confirm her death, so they wouldn't disbelieve it again. Tess, Eleanor let out a wretched scream and fainted. Ethan followed by spitting out a large mouthful of blood. His vision went black and he collapsed as well. When Ethan woke up, it was 3 days later. Tess's body was no longer at the hospital. Ethan quickly called the gardener home and learned that Tess had already been cremated. What a rush of blood surged through him. Why so soon? I haven't even attended her funeral, how could you? It was Leela. On the other end of the line, Eleanor was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, and the call disconnected. Ethan's head was buzzing, throbbing with pain. He had only one thought. He had to go to the gardener's, to find Tess, but as soon as he tried to get up, he began to vomit large mouthfuls of blood again, as if he were trying to empty out his internal organs. One mouthful after another, as if he would cough up every drop of blood in his body. The Pierce family, terrified, immediately called for a doctor. But after countless tests at numerous hospitals, no one could find the cause of his vomiting blood. Each time it happened, Ethan felt as if he had been run over by a truck, the pain so intense it was like dying. No amount of painkillers helped. No matter how many painkillers he took, there was not the slightest relief. This reminded Ethan of the car accident from his childhood. He remembered being hit by a large truck. After the truck fled the scene, he lay on the cold ground, feeling just as he did now, his whole body shattered, endlessly vomiting blood. At that time, he thought he was going to die. But later, it seemed Tess had been by his side the whole time until he passed out. When he woke up, he found that he had miraculously recovered. Though Ethan didn't know the connection between then and now, he had a gut feeling that his current state was something more like retribution. Chapter 11. The fox reveals its tail for that very reason. When the doctor suggested he stay in the hospital for observation, Ethan refused without hesitation and went straight to the Gardner house. He had just arrived at the entrance when he ran into Leela, who was on her way out. Thinking of Tess, Ethan got straight to the point. "Leela, why were you in such a hurry to cremate Tess?" It was said that Leela had arranged for the funeral home to take Tess's body while Alina was still unconscious. Even Alina hadn't been able to properly handle Tess's final arrangements. Leela's voice was as frail as ever. "I was just worried that you and Mom would be too grief-stricken. Seeing my sister's body would only make it harder, so I did it." Ethan wanted to press further, but Leela claimed she had an urgent matter to attend to and quickly drove away. Watching her leave, Ethan felt that something was not right. That night, inside a flashy nightclub, Leela was dressed in a revealing outfit with heavy makeup, dancing wildly on the dance floor. A thuggish-looking man approached her, his words flippant as he started to touch her. Not only did Leela not refuse, but she pressed closer to the man, her flirtatious remarks so bold they even surprised him. Just as Leela was about to take things further with the man, her wrist was suddenly gripped tightly. Ethan, his face a mask of fury, dragged her out of the bar. Outside, Ethan looked at this completely transformed Leela. If he hadn't been suspicious and followed her here, he would never have believed this was the same person. When Leela saw it was Ethan, her eyes immediately reddened. "Ethan, a friend tricked me into coming here. That man was trying to take advantage of me. It's a good thing you came." She tried to throw herself into his arms but was coldly sidestepped. Ethan took out his phone and played a video. In the video, Leela was in the bar, proactively ordering drinks and male escorts and engaging in lewd conversation with a man she had just met. Veins bulged on Ethan's forehead. "Leela, you still dare to say you were forced?" He had expected her to be embarrassed, guilty, or even try to explain and apologize. But to his surprise, after a momentary stun, Leela reverted to the flippant attitude she had inside. "So you found out, why don't you come inside? It's my treat, what?" Ethan stared at her in disbelief. Seeing Leela turn to go back into the bar, Ethan grabbed her again. "Leela, do you have a death wish?" He remembered the old Leela, so frail that even loud noises from outside could overwhelm her, and her diet required a nutritionist's special planning. But just now, she seemed to have had quite a bit to drink. Ethan suddenly understood something and looked Leela up and down. "You've been healthy for a long time, haven't you?" Leela smirked. "You're only just realizing that now?" Her smile stung Ethan. His breathing became rapid and heavy. "You were already well. Why did you still make Tess donate her marrow?" "Now you've got it wrong. It wasn't me who wanted her to donate." Leela wagged a finger in front of his face. "From the very beginning, it was you and Mom who forced her to give me marrow. The doctor told you my body was fine, but you didn't listen, so all of this is your problem. It has nothing to do with me." Ethan felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His body swayed violently, and he suddenly bent over, vomiting another mouthful of blood. Leela, seeing this, stepped back with a look of disgust, afraid of being splattered. Ethan saw the revulsion on her face. At this point, how could he not understand? Perhaps this Leela, so different from before, was her true self. But he had realized it too late. His Tess was gone forever. Ethan thought if his Tess could see him now, she would be heartbroken. Chapter 12. The truth just then, several large, burly men rushed forward and seized Leela. Leela instinctively tried to struggle, but then she heard Alina's furious shout, "Leela, how long are you going to keep this madness up?" Alina's eyes were sharp, her tone filled with disappointment and rage. She glanced at the men and ordered coldly, "Take the young miss to the car, I have questions for her." Then, Alina's gaze shifted to the weakened Ethan. After a moment's hesitation, she sighed and said, "If you want to know the truth about Tess, then come with us." Half an hour later, the atmosphere in the living room of the Gardner villa was suffocatingly tense. The maid, who had falsely accused Tess on the day of the birthday party, was now trembling as she confessed everything. "It was the first young miss who made me do it. She said if I didn't, she would have me kicked out of the Gardner house and make it impossible for me to stay in the city." The maid's voice was choked with sobs, clearly terrified. On the day of the family portrait, the dress the first young miss prepared for the second young miss was actually one I bought for doing chores. The first young miss also said that whenever I brought meals to the second young miss, I should only give her cold, hard leftovers. The second young miss's beloved toys were actually broken by the first young miss on purpose. Also, the first young miss never liked painting. She was just jealous that the second young miss could become the last disciple of a master painter, so she made you snatch the spot and give it to her. With every revelation from the maid, the color drained further from Eleanor's and Ethan's faces. Through her words, they seemed to relive the past 20 years, days shrouded in deception and lies. By the end, both of them were sitting on the sofa in a daze, as if their very souls had been flayed. The maid, having said her piece, was now weeping uncontrollably, repeatedly kowtowing in the direction of Tess's old room. "Second young miss, I'm so sorry. You were a good person. All these years, we failed you. We deserve to die." Eleanor waved a weary hand, and the maid retreated, still crying. Leela, Eleanor's voice trembled. She looked furiously at Leela, the precious daughter she had doted on for over 20 years, who now seemed like a complete stranger. "Why would you do this? Tess donated her marrow for you month after month, even gave her life for you. How could you repay her kindness with such cruelty?" Eleanor's tone was filled with confusion and rage. However, Leela just smiled slowly, a look of complete indifference on her face. "Everything the maid just said, Tess explained it all to you back then. You were the ones who didn't listen. It was your distrust of her that killed her. What does it have to do with me? Leela, you?" In a state of extreme shock and rage, Eleanor shot up and slapped Leela hard across the face. Leela turned her head, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth, but she only gave a mocking smile. "What? You forced Tess to her death, and now you regret it, so you want to take it out on me? Trying to ease your guilt over Tess? Then go ahead, kill me after you've killed me. Will you start reminiscing about how good I was? Try to mourn me then? Ha, the human heart. What a hypocritical thing." Leela's words were laced with poison, enraging Eleanor so much she trembled all over. "You," Eleanor looked at Leela as if she were looking at a demon. She couldn't believe that this once innocent and obedient daughter could have turned into this. "How did you become like this?" Eleanor's voice was filled with despair and pain. "If I had known you were so malevolent, I would never have let my Tess give her life for you." Eleanor's words made Leela's pupils constrict, and her own words became even more vicious. "You think I'm unbearable now? Didn't you used to say I was innocent and sweet? Tess was obedient to you, never fighting back, never talking back. But wasn't she still framed? Her explanations fell on deaf ears, didn't they? Wasn't she driven to her death by you?" "Shut up, just shut up." Eleanor was shaking with anger, and she gasped for breath, nearly fainting on the spot. "Butler," Eleanor shrieked. "Lock this monster of a daughter upstairs and don't ever let her out of that room again." Leela was dragged upstairs by the servants, and the door was locked from the outside. But Leela immediately called the police, claiming she was being beaten and abused by her family. The 2 slaps on her face and her imprisonment in the room were her proof. In an instant, she threw the entire Gardner household into chaos. Eleanor was so angered she fell ill and was confined to her bed. She was completely disappointed in Leela and no longer cared about her fate. When the Pierce family heard about this, seeing Leela's now infamous reputation, they naturally refused to acknowledge the engagement to Ethan that had ended before it even began, and they made Ethan cut all ties with the Gardner family. Chapter 13, Is It Her? Meanwhile, at a welfare home on the outskirts of the city, Tess had been here for a month. No, to be precise, the body she now inhabited had been here for nearly 23 years. A month ago, when she woke up in this body, astonished to find herself still alive, she once again heard the voice of the deity. He asked her, "Do you remember the orange cat? The one you once saved?" It was then that Tess realized the helpless, crying orange cat in the storm drain had been the deity in disguise. He had been injured while on a mission and had reluctantly taken the form of a cat. The deity said gratefully, "You saved me. In return, I will let you live on as another person. This is your reward." And so, Tess became Tess of the welfare home, a young woman who shared her name. An orphan since birth, the welfare home was her only home. After college, out of affection for the welfare home and a sense of gratitude, she had returned to become a teacher. Her accidental death by drowning allowed Tess's soul to completely merge with this body. Tess didn't leave the welfare home. Instead, she fell in love with it. She once had family, but had never felt the warmth of a home, even losing her life because of them. But here, despite the lack of blood ties, everyone was as close as family. Tess quickly adapted to life here, building deep bonds with the children. On this day, the sky was a brilliant blue, and the sun shone brightly. After helping the children air out their quilts, Tess decided to take them to a nearby park to sketch. Besides teaching them from textbooks, she often taught them how to draw, hoping they could experience the beauty of art. On the other side of the park, Ethan sat quietly by the lake, his gaze traveling across the water to where Tess was sketching with the children. His heart lurched violently, and his thoughts drifted back to the past. Tess had loved to draw since she was a child. She had participated in many competitions and won many awards. She could have achieved so much more in this field. But it all came to an abrupt end after the gardeners forced her to give her spot as the last disciple of a master painter to Leela. It seemed that from that moment on, Tess never picked up a paintbrush again. At the time, he, like the rest of the gardeners, had thought Tess was just sulking, accusing her of being narrow-minded and not understanding Leela's situation. Thinking back now, Tess must have been utterly devastated. Everything she had, including her dreams, was being taken by Leela. How could she dare to desire anything? After all, everything would eventually be snatched away by Leela, just like the wedding she had so eagerly anticipated, and just like the only warmth she once had Ethan. At these thoughts, a dull ache spread through Ethan's chest. A familiar metallic taste rose in his mouth, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the wound in his heart. He clutched his chest, trying to leave, but his eyes remained fixed on the young woman on the grass by the lake. As he drew closer, the sense of familiarity grew stronger. When he finally saw Tess's face clearly, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. "Tess!" He managed to force out her name, but his throat seized up, unable to make a sound. The intense pain made it impossible for him to stand, and he fell to his knees. In the end, he could only watch as Tess led the group of children out of the park, boarded a bus, and completely disappeared from his sight. Chapter 14. Found her one day, as Tess was drawing with the children in the welfare home, a figure suddenly burst into the classroom. Their eyes met. Ethan's eyes were already red and moist. He moved toward Tess step by step. Ever since seeing her in the park that day, Ethan had been searching for Tess like a man possessed. Finally, he had found her here. After a moment of stunned silence, Tess clearly recognized Ethan as well. But he was like a different person from a month ago. His face was pale and lifeless, haggard and thin. He looked much like Tess had during her final, critical days. In fact, Tess had a feeling that she and Ethan might meet again. Not just because she was also named Tess now, but because this body bore an 80% resemblance to her original one. Perhaps it was also due to the shared fate that had once bound them. However, she had never imagined having any kind of relationship with him again. Just like now, even though she had once seen him as her salvation, after being hurt by him to the point of death, seeing him again stirred not a single ripple in her heart. And Ethan, seeing the unfamiliarity in her eyes, froze. "Tess, you don't recognize me? It's me, Ethan." "Oh." Tess's expression was faint, as if it didn't matter who he was. She said, "I'm in the middle of a class right now. Please leave." But Ethan kept his eyes fixed on her, not missing the slightest change in her expression. Tess, however, ignored him and continued with her lesson. From beginning to end, she was so calm and composed that Ethan might as well have been thin air. And Ethan's gaze remained locked on her the entire time. The feeling she gave him was so familiar. She was clearly Tess, but her attitude toward him made him question it. They had known each other for over 20 years, childhood sweethearts who had loved each other passionately after getting together. No matter what had happened in between, she couldn't possibly be so indifferent to him. And yet, Tess had indeed been cremated by Leela. The Gardner family and the funeral home staff could all attest to that. So who was this Tess before him? Was she his Tess or not? While Ethan's mind was in turmoil, Tess had finished her class and walked out of the classroom. Ethan instinctively followed her. He seemed unwilling to give up. Seeing Tess completely ignore him and go about her business, he began to tell her the story of their past. The new year was approaching, and Tess was cutting out various paper window decorations. Her hands moved with a smooth, fluid motion without a single pause. By the time Ethan finished his story, Tess had also finished the last paper cutting. It was a sunflower, lifelike, facing the sun, full of vibrant energy and new life. Just like the Tess of this moment. Tess! Ethan was afraid she would leave and go back to her dormitory, where he couldn't follow. He immediately stood up and blocked her path. Tess lifted her eyelids and gave him a faint glance. She finally spoke. "Kneel down and kowtow to me." Ethan's eyes flickered. After processing her words, a light suddenly shone in his eyes. "Tess, do you mean that if I kowtow to you, you'll forgive me?" But Tess let out a sneer. "Isn't your Tess buried in the cemetery? The reason I'm asking you to kowtow to me is because I feel you owe it to Tess. Since you're treating me as her, kowtowing to me is the same thing. As for whether she forgives you, you'll have to go down there and ask Tess yourself." With that, Tess gathered her paper cuttings and turned to leave. She had made her attitude clear, and she believed Ethan understood. Sure enough, Ethan didn't follow her anymore. Chapter 15. She is not her, however. 3 days later, Ethan came to the welfare home again. Compared to last time, he was noticeably more put together and well-dressed. Tess saw his gaze fixed on her and said directly to the security guard, "Don't let him in to bother me again." His constant shadowing was becoming a nuisance. But Ethan beat her to it, saying, "I'm here to volunteer." Tess, if he wanted to volunteer, that was his business. It had nothing to do with her. Ethan, however, seemed to have genuinely come to volunteer. Whatever tasks the welfare home assigned him, he accepted them all. After finishing his work, just as he was about to approach Tess, a familiar sharp pain shot through him, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Tess, seeing this, finally deigned to look up at him. But her eyes showed no trace of worry or concern. Ethan saw her even say to the director, "Director, please don't let him come volunteer next time. If something happens to him here, we can't take the responsibility." Saying this, as if she were afraid he had some contagious disease, she immediately led the children back to the dormitory building. Ethan watched her indifferent back as she left, and something inside him quietly shattered. He knew that it didn't matter if she was his former Tess or not. Now, he had completely lost her. In the days that followed, Ethan still came to the welfare home every day he could get out of bed. When they wouldn't let him volunteer, he simply made a 7-figure donation to the welfare home and came as a benefactor. He still coughed up blood every day, still suffered excruciating pain. Ethan even wished his condition would worsen, just so Tess might give him a single look of concern or ask him how he was. But it never happened, not even once. Over time, Ethan finally accepted a fact. Even if he died right in front of Tess, she probably wouldn't be moved in the slightest. Just like his past indifference to her, even when she said she would die, he had dismissed it as her being dramatic, as her competing with Leela for attention. Everything he was experiencing now, he clearly deserved. But when the boomerang hit him, why did it hurt so much? Later, Ethan simply gave up on expectations and stopped hoping. He just wanted to be able to see Tess every day. It seemed that only then could he feel that he was still alive, no longer the walking corpse he had become. Then one day, he suddenly saw Leela at the gate of the welfare home. Leela had clearly seen Tess too, and her expression was just as shocked as Ethan's had been when he first saw her. "Ethan, that's Tess, right? My Tess isn't dead?" Ethan didn't answer, instead asking, "What are you doing here?" He glanced at a car parked a dozen meters behind his own, his brow furrowing deeply. "Are you following me?" This was the suburbs, a relatively remote location, dozens of kilometers from the Gardner villa. He himself had only found this place by chance after seeing Tess in the park. Leela didn't deny it, just grabbed his arm tightly. "You answer me first. Is it her or not?" She didn't say that she had noticed something was off with Ethan lately. He had shed his previous decadent state and was always leaving the house neatly dressed. She had thought Ethan had moved on, that he had already forgotten Tess. Driven by a desire to defend her daughter's memory, she had followed him. She never expected to follow him here and see Tess. Ethan pushed her arm away and replied faintly, "She's not." Chapter 16. I'm a person who cherishes life, but Leela didn't believe him and was about to enter the welfare home. She looks so much like my Tess, and they're both named Tess. How could she not be my daughter? Ethan, however, grew angry. Wasn't your daughter already burned to ashes by Leela? Eleanor's figure faltered, tears already streaming down her face, but she still walked into the welfare home without hesitation. Ethan, seeing this, didn't stop her further. 1, he couldn't stop her forever. And 2, some walls just had to be run into by the person themselves. Sure enough, 2 hours later, Eleanor walked out looking completely lost. She was like someone under a spell, muttering to herself, "It is my Tess, how can it not be?" Ethan got back in his car, and Eleanor got in with him. They sat in silence. In fact, ever since Leela's true colors were exposed, and they learned what Tess had endured all those years, they had never spoken to each other again. Even if they saw each other on the street, they would pass by without a glance, as if they had never known each other. Because they knew they both resented the other for the harm done to Tess, and even more, they resented themselves. It was Ethan who finally broke the silence. "Mrs. Gardner, I hope you won't come here again in the future. She is not Tess, and I don't want you to disturb her peace." But Eleanor snorted heavily. "If she's not Tess, then why are you here every day trying to win her over? And besides, whether she is or not, what I want to do is none of your business. Ethan, you can't be so selfish. And you're not the only one in this world who can't let go of Tess." With that, Eleanor got out of the car and left. They had failed to reach an agreement, and their parting was anything but amicable. The next day, both Ethan and Eleanor went to the welfare home. They faced each other like rivals, but it didn't stop them from simultaneously trying to win Tess's favor. Tess's attitude toward them remained the same as before. She treated them like air. It didn't matter if they came for a day, a week, or a month. She was as solid as a rock, unmoving. Until one day, Leela, having followed Eleanor, also arrived. On this day, Tess had just finished grading the children's homework when she looked up and saw Leela at the door. Leela was dressed in a punk style, but one could tell it wasn't a genuine pursuit, more like a rebellion rooted deep in her bones. She looked at Tess with a sinister, playful expression, like a cat about to play with a mouse. "Tess!" Leela's tone held no trace of doubt. It was as if she was certain that this was the same Tess who had donated bone marrow to her for over 20 years. "Weren't you burned to ashes by me? How did you come back to life? Could it be that soul transmigration is real? But you lived such a tiring life, why would you want to keep living? Wouldn't death be a relief?" Tess hadn't understood before how Leela, her own sister, could be so cruel to her. Now, she understood. Some people are just born without a heart. Thinking this, as soon as Leela walked up to her, Tess suddenly raised her hand and slapped her hard across the face. Meeting Leela's shocked and venomous gaze, Tess looked at her as if she were looking at trash. "You're encouraging me to die. Shouldn't I reward you with a slap?" "Tess," Leela gritted her teeth. "If I could drive you to your death once, I can do it a second time. Is that so?" Tess suddenly grabbed Leela, her hand closing around her neck, and pinned her against the windowsill. More than half of Leela's body was hanging out of the window. With a gust of wind, it seemed she could fall at any moment. Leela immediately began to struggle desperately. "Let me go," Tess complied and let go. "Ah," Leela screamed, and immediately grabbed onto Tess's arm for dear life. Tess looked down at her and spoke in a low, ghostly voice. "I'll only say this once. I'm a person who cherishes my life. If you've got a death wish and insist on coming here to find it, it's not like I can't grant it for you." Chapter 17. Money makes the world go round. Tess. Tess. Just then, the voices of Eleanor and Ethan sounded. Eleanor's face was etched with worry, though it was unclear if she was worried about Tess or Leela. Ethan looked at Tess with a complicated expression, his thoughts unreadable. Tess, seeing them, simply yanked Leela up and threw her towards them. Tess looked at Eleanor and Ethan, her face expressionless. "Keep your little animal on a leash. If you let it out to bite people again, I won't be as merciful as I was today. And that goes for you too as well." She was fed up with their endless entanglement, fed up with the trouble they brought her. "Mom." Leela threw herself into Eleanor's arms, looking aggrieved. Eleanor's body stiffened. As angry as she was, she couldn't bring herself to push away the daughter she had raised for so many years. She only advised her earnestly, "She is not Tess. I don't care how you mess around outside, but you are not to harass her again, do you hear me?" Ethan, however, kept his eyes on Tess's retreating back. In the depths of the hallway, her figure was silhouetted against the night, looking so thin and cold. Tess had thought that, given Leela's personality, she wouldn't give up so easily. After all, she had wanted to take everything from Tess before. Now, with Alina and Ethan coming here every day, how could Leela stand it? Sure enough, Leela showed up again the next day, this time with a demolition crew in tow. Leela looked at Tess with smug triumph. "Tess, I told you, even if you live again, I can still make you lose everything. You care about this welfare home, don't you? Then I'll buy this place and raze it to the ground." Tess looked at her indifferently, as if looking at an idiot. "Do you think this is a TV show? You can buy it just because you want to. Demolish it just because you feel like it. Do you have the permits and licenses? How dare you be so brazen?" Leela raised an eyebrow. "Haven't you heard that money makes the world go round?" Seeing her smug, villainous face, Tess already knew what was going on. It seemed Leela was quite confident about this. That meant she must have someone backing her up. Thinking this, Tess became less anxious. She didn't even ask the director to call the police. She just had the director take the children back to the dormitory building while she sat calmly in the courtyard, leisurely sipping her tea. "Go ahead and demolish it. I'll just sit here and watch you. You think I won't dare to force the demolition just because you're here?" Leela said, and was about to order the demolition crew forward when a sharp shout came. "Stop!" It was Alina. Alina walked up to Leela and glared at her furiously. "What nonsense are you up to now? Didn't I tell you not to come here anymore? Now get the hell home, then." Alina walked over to Tess and apologized on Leela's behalf. "Leela is being foolish, don't take it to heart. But rest assured, I won't let her touch this welfare home." "Oh, then make them all leave," Tess replied faintly. But Alina didn't move, nor did she tell Leela to take the demolition crew away. Tess, seeing this, seemed to have expected it and let out a cold laugh. "Mrs. Gardner, what are you trying to do? Just say it." Alina sat down directly in front of her. "Tess, Mom. No, your auntie does have something she wants to discuss with you. Auntie has seen your paintings and knows you have a great talent for it. Auntie wants you to continue on this path, to send you abroad for further studies. What do you think? Auntie is not saying it's bad for you to stay at the welfare home, but you're in the prime of your youth. You shouldn't waste it here, it would bury your talent." Tess looked at Alina's. "I'm doing this for your own good" expression, and directly exposed her. "And if I don't agree, are you going to let Leela continue to threaten me with the welfare home?" Before Alina could show her embarrassment and try to explain, Tess raised a hand to stop her and continued. "You feel guilty because you forced the original Tess to her death, so now you want to use that guilt to bind me. But my current life shouldn't have to pay for your guilt. Is what you call, for my own good, really for my own good? Do you even know what I truly want? If you don't know, I can tell you once. What I want is the peaceful life I have now, a life undisturbed by any of you." Alina's mouth opened and closed, as if wanting to say something, but in the end, not a single word came out. Just then, Ethan walked over. He seemed to be speaking to Alina, but also making a promise to Tess. "As long as I'm here, no one can touch this welfare home." Chapter 18. Making trouble again in the end, Alina took Leela and the demolition crew away, but Ethan stayed. Tess ignored him and was about to get up and leave when Ethan called out to her. "Tess, can you sit with me for a while? Today is my birthday. In the past, you were always with me on my birthday." Tess turned her head and gave him a cold glance. "Trying to play the sentiment card now? When you were scheming against me with Leela and her mother, why didn't you think of this sentiment then?" Ethan's face paled slightly. "You figured it all out." Tess snorted coldly. "Leela is venomous, but she's an idiot, a complete airhead. Her little tricks only work on the blind and the biased who genuinely favor her. To an outsider, they're actually quite pathetic. If you said she'd stab me in the back, I'd believe it. But to say that with her intelligence and ability, she could get the permits to forcibly acquire this land. With that meager brain of hers, is that even possible? And if I'm not mistaken, this idea was probably suggested, overtly or covertly, by Mrs. Gardner. Leela heard about it and immediately went to inquire and implement it. As for you, Ethan, you were the one who pulled some strings, having someone hint to Leela about the feasibility of this matter, which is why she dared to come here directly with a demolition crew. Hearing this, Ethan was stunned for a long moment. Then, a bitter smile appeared on his face. "I forgot, my Tess has always been very smart. Back in school, even though you couldn't attend classes regularly due to your health, you always ranked at the top of every exam. You were the famous top student of the school." Ethan thought, if Tess hadn't been burdened by the Gardner family, Even if she had been born into a very ordinary family, with her intelligence, her life would have been brilliant and dazzling. Just like now, even though she was just staying at the welfare home, Ethan knew that she had secretly participated in several international competitions. The recently famous, gifted painter on the internet, known as White Tea, was actually Tess. In addition to that, she was also learning self-defense, finance, tea ceremony, and more. His Tess was truly living a good, serious life. So, how could he, like the Gardners, have the biased view that she would only have a bigger stage in life if she studied abroad? And it was precisely because of this that he found it even harder to let go of Tess. Before Tess could walk away, Ethan quickly added, "Leela is a lunatic, you have to be careful of her. But I will always protect you." Tess's footsteps didn't pause, and her figure quickly melted into the night. For the next few days, Leela did not appear again. But then one day, the police came to the door. They said they had received a report that Tess's room contained illicit substances. Tess did not stop them. She couldn't stop them anyway. She let the law enforcement officers search her room. In the end, they actually found a small packet of illicit substances under her bedboard. At this time, both Ethan and Alina were present. Ethan, seeing this, immediately stepped forward to explain, "This isn't Tess's. I can guarantee it with the entire Pierce Corporation. This doesn't belong to Tess." Alina also said anxiously, "This must be a misunderstanding. You can't wrong Tess." Chapter 19. Arrested Tess glanced at a luxury car hidden behind a bush not far away and said directly to the law enforcement officers, "If you want to know whose this is, just bring the person in that car over, and you'll find out." A few minutes later, they did indeed bring Leela over from the car. When Leela was brought over, she was still struggling. "I'm the one who reported it. Why are you arresting me?" The officers were impartial. "You all need to be taken back for investigation. We hope for your cooperation." Hearing this, Leela vaguely understood something. If they did a blood test, she would be finished. She immediately broke free from the officers and threw herself at Alina's side. "Mom, save me, I can't be taken away." Alina stared blankly at Leela, and from her panic, she suddenly understood everything. She suppressed the urge to strike Leela, but her eyes shot daggers at her, filled with the fury of hating iron for not becoming steel. Leela, seeing this, grabbed Alina's arm again. "Mom, I'm your daughter, the one who shares your blood. If something happens to me, how will you manage alone? Even if you don't think about me, think about the Gardner family." Alina's body trembled violently. After glaring fiercely at Leela, her gaze toward Tess was filled only with apology. Then, as if she had made up her mind, she turned to the officers. I can testify that the substance does indeed belong to Tess. I saw with my own eyes that she put it under the bedboard." Hearing this, Tess just looked at Alina faintly. Although she had long given up any hope for the Gardner family, seeing Alina once again side with Leela, her heart still ached with a sour pang. Why was she never the one to be chosen? "Mrs. Gardner?" Tess's voice was strained, but she tried to keep it calm. "I understand you want to protect the Gardner family's reputation, but hasn't Leela brought enough scandal to the family? She is the real disgrace to the Gardners. You indulge her out of motherly affection, but have you ever thought that this will only make things worse? You feel sorry for her, but what about me? I've been wrongly accused countless times. Am I supposed to just endure it silently?" Alina felt as if she had been stung. Her pupils contracted sharply as she looked at Tess in shock. Others might not have understood, but she could hear that Tess's last sentence was a veiled admission of her own identity. "Tess, my Tess!" Tears welled up in Alina's eyes. Just as she was about to walk towards Tess, Leela suddenly knelt before her, hugging her legs tightly, her voice choked with sobs. "Mom, I'm the biological daughter you've loved for over 20 years. I was sick from birth, and I've been in and out of hospitals for surgeries all these years. You said I was your life, that you would love me forever. Are you abandoning me now?" "Mom," Alina's feet seemed nailed to the ground. She looked down at the pitiful face of Leela, then up at the desolate, dead sea-like eyes of Tess, her heart torn in a fierce struggle. Finally, her knees buckled, and she knelt heavily before Tess, kowtowing repeatedly. "Tess, I'm so sorry. Just admit to the drug possession. But after this is over, I will make it up to you. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Chapter 20. I know why you're coughing up blood. Tess just gave a silent, mirthless laugh. Mrs. Gardner, don't say I didn't give you a chance." With that, she took out her phone and played a video. It was surveillance footage. In the video, a disguised Leela snuck into Tess's room and stuffed the packet of illicit drugs under the bedboard. Ever since the demolition crew incident a few days ago, Tess had noticed Leela lurking suspiciously around the welfare home, even trying to bribe the security guard. She had a vague idea of what Leela was planning. Rather than being a target in the dark, it was better to strike decisively and eliminate the problem for good. So, Tess played along, taking everyone from the welfare home out for a sketching trip, giving Leela the opportunity to sneak in. She just hadn't expected Leela to be so brazen and insane as to resort to something so illegal. And a leaner actually dared to cover for her thinking this. She looked at the law enforcement officers, her words firm and clear. "I am not only reporting Leela for drug use and slander, but I am also suing her mother, Mrs. Leela Gardner, for perjury and framing me. And I will absolutely not accept any form of settlement from them." Leela collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud. Even as the officers cuffed her and led her away, she was still trying to argue. "You've all been deceived by Tess. She fabricated that video. That's not me in it. I was the one who reported it. You should be arresting Tess." But an officer pulled her up firmly and explained sternly, "Before you filed your report, Miss Tess Gardner had already filed one against you for framing her. We have also gathered conclusive evidence. Otherwise, we wouldn't be arresting you." At this point, how could a leaner not understand? Leela thought she could harm Tess, but little did she know, Tess was just waiting to spring a trap. As for herself, she truly deserved it, and the Gardner family was finished. Before being taken away, a leaner was still trying to beg for Tess's forgiveness. "Tess, I'm so sorry, But Tess didn't even glance at her. She got into another police car and went with the officers to give her statement. Ethan watched her leave, a mix of relief and disappointment in his eyes. He had already seen that Tess was not as passive as she seemed, and he knew she would be fine. Sure enough, she had turned the tables and emerged unscathed. But it seemed his strong, capable Tess no longer needed him. The final outcome of the matter was that both Leela and Alina received criminal sentences. Tess had expected this, and life at the welfare home became much quieter. Ethan finally stopped coming as well. Tess assumed he had come to his senses and given up, so she paid it no mind. She didn't know that Ethan had gone to see Leela. Through the iron bars, the moment Leela saw Ethan, her eyes instantly reddened, and she called out, "Ethan?" Ethan, having long seen her true colors, only felt revulsion. His face was filled with impatience. "If you wanted to see me just to disgust me, then there's no need to waste any more time." Seeing him get up to leave, Leela immediately said, "Ethan, wait. I know why you've been coughing up blood." Ethan's breath caught, and he sat back down in front of her. Seeing this, a vicious smile flashed in Leela's eyes, and she began to negotiate. "Ethan, I know you have connections. If you can get me out of here, I'll tell you the reason. Do you remember the car accident you had when you were 5? Wasn't your physical condition then exactly the same as it is now? Do you remember the day Tess gave me her last bone marrow donation? She said that if she died, you would die too. But in the end, she lived, borrowing someone else's body. You didn't die either, but you started showing the same symptoms as after the childhood accident. So, the reason you're coughing up blood and living a life worse than death is because of Tess. If you want to recover, you have to start with Tess." Chapter 21. What do you plan to do? Back at the welfare home, the director suddenly informed Tess that everyone at the home was required to undergo a physical examination. And it seemed to be mandatory. Tess didn't want to make things difficult for the director, so she agreed. She spent almost the entire day undergoing tests. Besides the routine checkups, she also had many tests that were usually only done for serious illnesses. A week later, on the day her full results came out, Ethan, who had been missing for days, reappeared. When Ethan arrived, Tess was reviewing her medical report. Seeing this, Ethan casually asked, "Are the results okay?" "Nothing wrong." Tess didn't even look up, just let out a faint, mocking laugh. "Haven't you already seen the results? And you must be quite disappointed that they didn't find anything wrong with me, aren't you?" A chill of being seen through, of being laid bare, washed over Ethan, but his gaze toward Tess was still surprisingly frank. "You figured it all out?" Tess closed the medical report. "Leela and Mrs. Gardner are not out yet. Who else but you could go to such lengths to study me? A bitter smile touched Ethan's lips. I guess I can't hide anything from you. He then told her everything Leela had said to him. Tess seemed unsurprised and just said, "So, studying my body was just the first step. What do you plan to do next? Find a master to perform an exorcism on me? Or just capture me, torture my body, break my will, and force me to tell you what's really going on?" Hearing this, Ethan's eyes filled with an undeniable pain. "Tess, you know I would never hurt you. Whether you believe me or not, I just want to tell you that I had someone give you a full physical examination only because I wanted to know about your physical condition. Because you once said that if you died, I would die too. Although I don't know the connection, I was just worried that my physical condition would affect you." Tess's expression flickered for a moment, but was gone in an instant. When she looked at Ethan again, her face was only indifferent. "You survived a car accident in your childhood. Shouldn't you cherish your life even more now? As for your current condition, after enough pain, you become numb. After coughing up enough blood, you can slowly get used to it, can't you?" Just like the former Tess, who had truly been in so much pain that her nerves had gone numb. And she had already guessed the reason for Ethan's current physical state. It was likely the butterfly effect of her not dying and becoming another Tess. So, he should cherish this second chance at life even more. And Tess's words had already made her attitude toward Ethan clear. She had never wanted him to die. "Tess, thank you." Ethan understood her meaning. Then, as if he thought of something, he added, "By the way, there are some things I think you might want to know." With that, Ethan took out his laptop from his bag and showed Tess a very long video. After Leela had tried to negotiate with Ethan, he knew right away that she could not be allowed to remain a threat. Otherwise, she would be a ticking time bomb for Tess. So, he leaked the news of Leela's crimes, making it widely known. This way, even if Alina wanted to protect Leela, she would be powerless. Sure enough, the Gardner family elders directly approached Alina, wanting to expel Leela from the family corporation. The content of the video was Alina's visit to Leela. Chapter 22, out of hate, out of revenge, Alina seemed to still want to protect Leela, so she said to her, "Leela, after this is over, I'll send you abroad. You can start over, be a good person, and never come back." But Leela shoved her away. "Are you trying to abandon me? Are you trying to take Tess back? Never mind whether Tess will forgive you for what you've done. I will never allow Tess to return to the Gardner family. As long as I'm alive, I will never let Tess have a moment of peace." Alina stared blankly at Leela, then suddenly erupted in anger. "Leela, do you have a heart? You stole everything from Tess, even her life. And you still won't let her go. What do you want, and why do you hate Tess so much?" "I hate her." Leela burst into a nearly insane laugh. "My dear mother, why would you think I only hate her? I hate all of you. Why are all of you healthy, while I was born sick? It's not fair. Because I was sick, I couldn't do anything I wanted. I had to be careful with everything I ate. I had to go to the hospital constantly, enduring one surgery after another, one hospital stay after another, one torment after another. As a human being, why did I have to endure all this? I refuse to accept it. Only when you become as miserable as I am can I feel vindicated. Only when you become more miserable than me is it fair." Hearing this, Alina's entire body trembled uncontrollably. It was as if, for the first time in over 20 years, she was truly seeing Leela. "So, Leela, everything you did was just out of revenge. You took revenge on Tess, on me, on Ethan, on all of us. You deceived all of us, tortured all of us until we were in agony, and even tried to drag the entire Gardner family down with you, all out of hate, out of revenge." Alina had always thought that perhaps because Leela had been forced to control herself for so long, she had become rebellious as a way of exploring her newfound freedom after her health improved. She thought her desire to snatch everything was just a childish possessiveness, perhaps a bit more extreme than most. But she never imagined it was nothing like that. All her assumptions were just excuses she had made for Leela out of her biased love. And she finally understood what Tess had said before. It was her unconditional indulgence of Leela that had led to this disaster. The precious jewel she had cherished for over 20 years was, in fact, an evil seed on the inside. "Leela, life and death are fated, wealth and honor are in the hands of heaven. It's not something you or I can control. You were born sick. If you hate me for it, I can understand. But you shouldn't hate the Gardner family. If the Gardner family hadn't paid for your medical treatment, you might not have recovered and had such a comfortable life. And you certainly shouldn't have harmed Tess. She gave you her whole life, her very life. You say you feel it's unfair, but your unfairness was paid for by Tess with her life. Do you really not feel a single shred of guilt towards Tess? Eleanor wanted to ask this question for Tess's sake. Leela, however, just laughed nonchalantly. Mom, do you know why I continued to accept Tess's bone marrow donations even after I was well? Do you think I didn't feel pain? Of course not. I just wanted Tess to be as miserable as I was. Even if my body no longer needed it, I wanted to drain her of all her marrow, all for me. So, do you think I would feel guilty towards her? Haha, Chapter 23. Leela's retribution. You lunatic, you're a complete and utter lunatic. For the first time, Eleanor felt that Leela was not her daughter. The words "born evil" flashed through her mind. And at that moment, she finally made up her mind to sever all ties with Leela. Otherwise, she would surely be dragged into an endless hell by her. Thinking this, she immediately called her lawyer and, on the spot, drafted a document to disown Leela. Leela seemed to have no attachment to her and simply said, "You want to disown me? Fine, give me 2/3 of your entire fortune." Eleanor knew why Leela wanted 2/3. She didn't want Eleanor to give her assets to Tess. But now, in order to completely sever ties with her, Eleanor agreed. After Eleanor transferred her current assets to Leela and both had signed the disownment papers, Leela suddenly gave a sinister smile. Mom, you know that legally, you can't really disown a direct blood relative, right? You're shameless, Eleanor couldn't hold back and slapped her hard, then said viciously, "Whether I recognize you or not is my decision." Just then, a prison doctor walked over and handed Leela her medical report. "Leela, your test results are back. You have prion disease." Prion disease? The cruel smile on Leela's face froze. What's prion disease? How did I get prion disease? The prison doctor had heard about all of Leela's deeds, including her conversation with her mother, which the doctor had unintentionally overheard. So she spoke bluntly. Prion disease is what people often call the disease you get from cannibalism, from eating your own species. As for the cause of your infection, although we haven't found a definitive reason, it's hard to say it's not because of the large amount of someone else's bone marrow transplanted into your body. By the way, about this prion disease, I need to explain it to you. There is currently no cure for prion disease. After infection, the patient needs to be isolated. The patient will gradually become aggressive, lose mobility, and descend into dementia. No, that's not possible. It can't be. Leela collapsed to the floor, her face a mask of terror. She suddenly thought of Eleanor and immediately crawled towards her on her knees. Mom, I know I was wrong. Everything I said just now was nonsense. I love you. Save me, Mom. You can't abandon me. I'm your most beloved daughter. But Eleanor took a few steps back, avoiding her. Her face now held only disgust and revulsion. Leela, even though you came from my womb, I do not recognize you as my daughter. You are a demon. If it were possible, I wish I had never given birth to you. And now you want me to save you. In your dreams, your current situation is your own retribution. I'm so glad that heaven has finally opened its eyes. The suffering my Tess endured can finally be put to rest. As for you, Leela, even if you get out of here, I will find a private hospital to lock you up in. You will never think of harming anyone again, and the money you just swindled from me can be considered payment for your treatment or an early offering for your funeral. With that, Eleanor turned and left with a sense of relief. Behind her, Leela's terrified and unwilling screams grew more and more distant until they disappeared completely. And with that, the video ended. Chapter 24. The last meeting. Ethan closed the laptop, and Tess withdrew her gaze. A slight curve appeared on her lips. She had to admit, after watching that, she felt refreshed and relieved. Even looking at Ethan now was a little more pleasant. As they say, what goes around comes around. It's not that karma doesn't exist, it's just a matter of time. A few days later, Eleanor came again, this time with a lawyer. Eleanor stopped Tess. "Tess, please don't go yet. I'm not here to bother you this time. I just want to tell you something. After I'm done, I'll leave immediately and never appear before you again." With that, she had the lawyer place a document in front of Tess. Tess looked down and saw it was a property transfer agreement. Eleanor had transferred the majority of her remaining assets to Tess. As if afraid she would refuse, Elena quickly added, "I'm giving you this not to ask for your forgiveness or for you to come back to the Gardner family. Just as you said before, I just want to make up for the harm I caused you. Tess, please accept it. As long as you accept it, I will never bother you again, okay?" Elena's knees were bent, her back slightly stooped, as if she were about to kneel and beg her to accept. Tess looked up at Elena. She didn't know when the meticulously maintained socialite had started to look like an ordinary middle-aged woman. Seeing her pleading and weary eyes, Tess ultimately did not refuse, only saying faintly, "Then I will thank Mrs. Gardner on behalf of the welfare home." Elena instantly understood her meaning. Tess intended to donate all these assets to the welfare home, but no matter what, as long as she accepted it, that was enough. Tess signed the transfer agreement directly and then turned to leave. Elena watched her retreating back with eyes full of love. Despite her reluctance to let her go, she didn't dare to step forward and stop her, let alone stay any longer, because she had promised Tess she would not appear before her again. Throughout Tess's life, Elena had never kept a single promise she made to her, from small things like sleeping with her for one night, reading her a bedtime story like she did for Leela, or taking her to an amusement park. So this time, she absolutely could not, and absolutely would not, break her word again. "Tess, Mom is leaving now." With one last, infinitely fond look at Tess, Elena slowly turned and left. Her staggering figure gradually dissolved into the vast night. And from then on, she never appeared again. Ethan also stopped coming to the welfare home every day, and each time he did come, he looked more haggard than the last. The backs of his hands and his arms were covered with needle marks. Tess knew those were from his treatments, just like the back of her own body had once been covered with such marks, until, a month later, Ethan came again. This time, he was in a wheelchair, being pushed by someone. The current Ethan was emaciated, looking as if his life force was completely drained. "Tess!" Ethan's voice was hoarse as he called her name. He saw the flicker of shock in Tess's eyes upon seeing him and managed a gentle smile. "Do I look scary right now?" Tess looked at him faintly, asking about his condition for the first time in a long while. "What's happened to you?" Chapter 25. Finale. Ethan didn't answer. His gaze, tender and full of love, rested on her as he spoke slowly. "Tess, I tried donating bone marrow once. I think I can finally understand how much pain you were in. Tess, I'm so sorry for making you hurt so much before." It seemed Ethan's tears had already run dry. His eyes were hollow, but the heartache in them was so profound, as if deeply branded there. Tess, seeing this, had a faint guess. He must have deliberately extracted his marrow, deliberately tormented his own body. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ended up like this. But she didn't speak, didn't ask further, just listened as Ethan continued. "You probably still remember my car accident when I was a child. Actually, I lost a part of my memory then, but after donating marrow once, I got that memory back. I saw you kneeling before me, begging the deity to save my life, saying you were willing to trade your life for mine. Later, you said you agreed to share a life with me. So, the last time I forced you to donate marrow, that's why you said if you died, I would die too, right?" Ethan braced himself, slid down from the wheelchair, and knelt before Tess. He moved forward on his knees until he reached her legs, his hands carefully reaching out to touch her knees. "Tess, let me be close to you one last time, okay?" Tess didn't refuse, allowing him to gently rest his head on her lap. Ethan's voice came again, soft and drifting like a valley breeze. "Tess, do you think there really are deities in this world? If there really is a deity, I am willing to release you from our shared life. I don't want my wretched remaining years to affect you anymore. I only wish for you to be forever safe and happy." Tess's heart, which had been as hard as a rock, finally trembled slightly. After a long while, she finally spoke. "What you've said, the deity will hear it." A moment later, she asked again, "Ethan, do you blame me? Do you blame me for selfishly agreeing to the shared life back then, causing you to suffer all this?" Ethan seemed to let out a soft laugh, but his voice was choked with sobs. "Tess, of course I blame you. I blame you for not letting me die back then. If it weren't for me, you might not have suffered so much. The harm I've done to you, I can never repay in this lifetime." In a place where Ethan couldn't see, Tess raised her hand and gently, almost imperceptibly, stroked the air above his head twice. "Ethan, I may have blamed you, hated you, but I don't regret knowing you. The pain you gave me was real, but the dark times you walked with me, the hardships we endured together, those were also real. And now, everything is even. Ethan, forget me. Start over. Ethan didn't reply for a long time, then seemed to give a soft grunt of assent, which Tess didn't quite catch. 3 days later, Ethan's lawyer came with his will and inheritance. Ethan had left all his assets to Tess. It was a fortune that could allow Tess to live the rest of her life in comfort. Ethan's lawyer said that Ethan had refused treatment himself. Tess knew that Ethan was afraid his physical condition would affect her, so he was willing to use his own life to achieve the release from the shared life. It seemed to be raining outside. Tess's face felt cool. Just then, with a meow, a small orange cat leaped onto her and curled up gently in her lap. In an instant, it dispelled the vast, mountain-like loneliness in her heart. Tess stroked its soft fur. She knew the future was long, and she would cherish every day.